Welcome back to another Reddit Friday. This week, because I'm doing kind of a alternating theme, we are going back to r/writing on Reddit.com, and we are going to be answering some of the writing questions that are popping up. So, without further ado, let's begin. Our first question comes, how do you write fiction when each scene leads to 100 new questions? So they're writing a story, and it seems like each scene they write only creates more questions instead of answering them. It doesn't seem to be in a plot sort of way. So they're not saying that they're writing the scene and it's creating holes in their plot. They're saying they're writing the scene and they're getting tripped up over the little details. They mention what it's like to access X secure location, to fire X type of gun, what is the minor character's name, little details that you're going to need in the final draft, but that may not be necessarily pertinent to the actual writing of the first draft. I would recommend maybe just not, I don't want to say not caring, but not getting tripped up over the little details too much. One trick that I use when I am, because I too get tripped up over the little details, I like to know everything that's happening because I hate editing so much. It's not that I need to know what's happening in the first draft, it's that I hate going back to edit. So a trick that I use is I put whatever I'm kind of like leaving behind. Let's use a minor character's name. For those of you, I don't know if you can hear, but there's a puppy barking in the background. Please ignore him. He's hyper, which is why Mooney is hiding in here with me. So let's say the minor character's name. I usually use a trick where I just put the unknown information into brackets. I'll usually bold it because I don't use a whole lot of bold font in my first drafts. So I'll usually bold it so that when I'm going back through the draft, it'll like kind of catch my eye and make me remember I need to change it up. But it's a nice way of just kind of having a placeholder there. So if I don't know minor character's name, but I want to actually put some thought into that character's name, or I want to, put some actual research into accessing X secure location, I can just kind of put a placeholder there. And sometimes the placeholder is an entire scene, accessing X secure location. I'm getting hung up on that one because that is one that really would need some in-depth research and could really distract you from putting something down on that first draft. So what I would do is just put in brackets, accesses X secure location. I bold it and I would just leave it. I would go from we're outside X location, brackets, we're inside X location, boom. Then I can just proceed with the scene as usual. And at most, I would have to make a few tweaks as to where they came in or, if they had any gear with them or anything like that, but nothing too huge. And I wouldn't get tripped up putting in, 10 minutes to an hour's worth of research trying to figure out how to get into that location. So our next question is, do you guys ever envy other creative professionals? At first, my first knee-jerk reaction was, heck yes. I do. Then I actually read the post, and it does specifically know that OP's sister is a photographer. She makes what I make in a week, in a day. Friend is an artist and is constantly commissioned. So they go on to say it feels easier to appreciate visual work like art and photography than it is writing. Writing requires a conscious effort to read and absorb information. It's harder to understand. And she's feeling, I say she, I don't know. He or she is feeling a little down. And I would say that's pretty normal as far as really any creative professional goes. I have artist friends, but the artist friends I do have, it's not as easy as maybe OP's friend has it right now. And that's not to say that OP's friend hasn't gone through, hard times where people are constantly asking for free work or constantly asking for discounted work or doing that whole, if you give it to me for free, then I'll use it for, whatever I'm using it for, and then you get free publicity. That's payment in itself. I know a lot of digital artists and I know a lot of artists get commissioned on that kind of quid pro quo setup. And while great in a certain sense, to have your work out there, to, advertise each other like that, unfortunately, quid pro quo doesn't really pay the bills unless the quo you're getting is cold hard cash. OP, it does sound like they have a successful sister, a successful friend who are both in the visual arts, and it's sort of getting OP down, which is fair. Side noting on my answer, I am jealous of other creative professionals. I would kill to be able to put into a visual sense what I'm picturing in my head. I have tried my hand at artistry, and while I know it is a skill that I could cultivate and get better at, I honestly just I don't have the drive to become exceedingly good at art. I don't really have a natural inclination for it at all. I'm really bad at it. And while I know I could get better, I prefer to focus my talents on writing, and I prefer to focus my drive and my will to get better and to do better and to learn more into writing. And that's just how I prefer it. So our next one is how to avoid depicting your antagonist as pure evil when depicting their actions or beliefs say otherwise. I messed that one up, but you can see it. It's fine. So for this one, OP is referring to they do have a slavery system in OP's universe. OP doesn't want the slaveholders to come off as just inherently evil people who are like, ooh, I get to own people, yes! She just wants them to come off as maybe naive or ignorant or slightly brainwashed individuals who believe it's tradition, it's the way it's always been, it's helping the slaves. The slave era prioritized a lot of that. So I think OP is actually already kind of onto a good thing where she is giving her characters reason for submitting to the system and reasons why they aren't pushing back against the system. And that's really all you can do in a systematic suppression or oppression, not suppression, oppression, such as a slave system. Anybody who is contributing to the slave system and anybody who is especially benefiting from the slave system is going to come off as not a good person. So what you need to do is you need to depict good characteristics, you need to depict human characteristics, and you need to give them a reason why somebody who can come off as human and can come off as humane, more importantly, is contributing to a system that is in itself inhumane. I will note real quick that when you're dealing with issues like this, where there is an inherently bad thing and that bad thing is a systematic thing, you do need to be very careful to depict it as a bad thing. I have seen numerous authors get raked over the coals for depicting bad things but not actually addressing them as bad things. And you need to make sure if you're going to address bad things in your writing, that's great. We need serious topics in writing, but you need to make sure that you're depicting it as the negative connotation that it is. So, okay, so this one I just throw in. So I'm gonna read it and I'm gonna see if anybody else caught what I caught in this one. Does my character have a goal? Also, is there any conflict in my plot? In my story, the no-fun protagonist has his house accidentally destroyed by two naive, fun-loving neighbors that he lives in between. Inciting incident. Having seen enough, he decides to move far, far away to a gated community centered towards a more composed, laid-back lifestyle. During his first day there, he discovers it has everything he's ever wanted: interpretive dance classes, impromptu clarinet trios in the park. Hell, they even had canned bread. This is where it got me. Did it get any of you? For the first time in a long time, Edward was smiling, and the next day he set out to do it all over again. But as the days went on, his posture bowed, his eyelids sunk, and most notable of all, he lost his smile. Edward found himself sitting on a park bench, completely dejected. Yep, this is great. You may as well name this place Edward's Paradise, or perhaps Too Much Paradise. Over at the park fountain, Edward noticed a city worker setting down a leaf blower and head off to his lunch break. Nostalgic memories of his old neighbors began to flood in, particularly of the times he would yell at his two naive, fun-loving neighbors for interrupting his clarinet renditions with their own leaf blowers. After making sure no one was watching, he took a few tentative steps and picked up the leaf blower. He pointed the nozzle at his face and flicked it on. The air blew so hard that his nose oscillated like a diving board. Edward chuckled and did it again, and again, and again. Suddenly, Edward forgot what he was so glum about. I can't figure out if my character has a goal yet, and also, is there any conflict in here so far? Cheers. Okay, give me a second. Let me give you a second for those of you who didn't get it at the point I mentioned. That's an episode of SpongeBob SquarePants, y'all. Let's just be real about it. That is the plot for Tentacle Acres from SpongeBob SquarePants, and we all know it. And 1, there wasn't really a plot. 2, he didn't really have a goal. And 3, this is all because it was a children's show designed to be split into like 2 episodes per, let's say, 24 minutes with commercials. So I just thought that was hilarious that they just used an episode of Tentacle Acres to make a post. I don't know. I had to throw it in. Back to more serious posts. So this one we have dialogue, tags, and audiobooks. And it is pretty long. I will put it up for you guys so that you can see for yourself what the entire post is. I'm not going to read the whole post because unlike not Tentacle Acres that we just read, it's not really a story. Essentially, OP is talking about the tag said, which, for those of you who are unaware, and if you're a writer, I know you're not unaware, is a huge debate in the writing community. The word said is just, there's so many opinions about the word said. Personally, I don't really mind the word said when used in moderation. Everything in moderation, including moderation. But so this individual is specifically talking about how one of their teachers once told them that the tag said sort of becomes invisible to the reader after a while. And I have to say, I do relatively agree with that. So OP, following that advice, tagged a lot of saids in their work, but then went on to try to turn their story into an audiobook. And when they were listening to the audiobook, they realized that there was just so many saids in the audiobook. It was so-and-so said, da-da-da-da-da, said this, da-da-da-da-da, said that, da-da-da-da-da, said, and OP was like, oh my God. So OP went on to kind of ask, not so much ask, but more just kind of give general advice, give advice that they themselves have just found out about not tagging said so much if you do hope for your book to become an audiobook. Somebody commented, give me 1 second. Boom. So someone said, I just cracked open a Stephen King book and flipped a few pages. In those few pages, he, Stephen King, used the dialogue tags said, whispered, hissed, screamed, began, added. And also said he's famous for saying the road to hell is paved with adverbs, but he uses ly adverbs extensively to modify dialogue tags, i.e. she hissed defiantly and those kind of things. And I think that's a really good compromise, is to add adverbs on. If you want to use said, you can break it up by adding adverbs to the way they're saying something. You don't have to, use every single word you find on thesaurus.com when you look up said. You can just kind of tag the tags almost, if that makes any sense. So last few are kind of quick. I just wanted to touch on them real quick. Should I force subplots into my story? Another quick answer. If you are forcing something in your story, terrible idea. Don't do it. I think the first comment nailed this one too. If you're forcing it, it's not going to work very well. Plain and simple. That's what you got to go with. Now, I do think if you were trying to force subplots into your story, you might be a little too focused on the main plot, because I think, or maybe you're just narrowly defining subplot, because I think subplots should happen naturally in the story if you have a wide enough view of your cast. Because if you have a wide enough cast, and sometimes books only feature a handful of people, and that's fine. But if your book features, more than 3 people in a scene or in an interaction or in a situation, other people are going to have other things going on, and it should lend itself to at least a semi-interesting subplot that you can sort of like touch on here and there, just to add some interest and add some diversity to, not diversity, but like to shake up what's going on in your scenes. And I think that should happen pretty naturally. And if you're finding yourself forcing it, maybe reconsider how you're defining subplots, or reconsider how tight of a grip you have on your main plot, and consider maybe opening up to what's going on around the main plot and the main characters. All right, second to last two are sort of intertwined. It is, what are your favorite tropes and what are your worst favorite tropes? Worst favorite tropes. And these ones, I'm just going to answer myself real quickly, but mainly I'm including these because I want to hear your guys' thoughts. I want to hear what your favorite tropes and stories are and what your least favorite tropes and stories are. And because I am kind of a salt mine, I would also really, really like to hear your least favorite tropes. I will answer for myself so that this isn't like a one-sided conversation. My favorite trope is found family and a little bit secret dating. If secret dating is done well, I love it. The first To All the Boys I've Loved Before, nailed it, knocked out of the park. I loved it. I thought it was great. But yeah, so a little bit secret dating, but mostly found family. I love the found family plot. It's one reason that I stuck with CW's The 100 for so long is I kept waiting for the found family to like come back or get better or something. It didn't, but it's fine. We're fine. So found family is my number one favorite trope and it features a lot in my writing. So you can tell. Least favorite trope. I don't know if I have a least favorite per se. I did agree with a lot. I'm kind of critical on most tropes, but I don't think I have necessarily a least favorite. Some of the answers we got was communication missteps, where like the plot hinges on one character like misunderstanding what another character's doing and then just going through like the whole plot without ever actually speaking like humans about what the miscommunication is. And I will say that does irk me too. Like just talk like humans. Also, overpowered heroes that can't defeat villains. I will say it's more irritating in written role play. You always run into people who are just, you run into like the big bad villain and they're like, hiya! Like right out that they like slashed you once with their sword and now you're dead. And you're like, okay. Precocious child, woman. Oh, there we go. The woman who must choose between handsome man A or handsome man B. The love triangle. So I will say I do loathe a love triangle. Mostly because most love triangles are done really, really, really terribly that tend to put a woman on a pedestal and then she just kind of like watches these two guys like battle it out for her like constantly. Like they're being rude to each other and mean to each other. Sometimes they're like physically fighting each other and she's just like, oh no, please don't. And it's like, come on, girl, like stop stringing the two guys along. Like you're an adult woman, like make a pros and cons list if you have to, but like pick one. Stop stringing them both along for your own vanity or whatever. And half the time I just want to see the guys like turn into buddies and be like, yo, peace girl, I'm out. Like we decided we didn't want to fight for your heart because you're kind of a bee. So Office did that. I loved it. So yeah, we're going to go with love triangle. A badly done love triangle is my least favorite trope. That's what we're going to go with. And the final one, which is same as the trope ones, I mostly just included it to see if you guys had any opinions. And it is, what was your first draft's most pointless scene? Which I'm only going to give you guys one, but I'm going to be honest with you guys. A lot of my first drafts have a crap ton of useless scenes. But generally they're just like little interactions with people, like little fun moments. For my latest work, Kepler, I have a scene where one of the characters, Hannah, is like chatting with some other characters and they're chatting about halal food. I have another where they're like kind of having a little dance party on their new planet. Like they finally have a moment to breathe and they like have a little dance party and you see like some of the couples together and you see like some of the wannabe couples like kind of exchanging eyes and it's super cute. It doesn't really contribute to the story at all, so I know it's not going to make the final cut, but it's cute and I like them and I like writing them. But I want to hear your guys's most pointless scenes that you've written, your favorite tropes, and your least favorite tropes. So if you want to leave comments down below, I would love to hear them. I try to answer all the comments. So I always say that just in case I get a lot of comments, but honestly, the odds of that are not likely. So comment below with all of those answers, and I will be answering you. And you guys can follow me on my social medias, Right or Wrong. It's the same name as the channel, and you can find me on both Instagram and Twitter. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button, that little notification bell, so that you get notified when I post. Later, writers.